one of those things that remain in constant in negotiation, wherein we're able to kind of reflexively live into this idea of citizenship that is in the moment elusive to us, right? We know that citizens don't have to negotiate for their existence, they can take it for granted. And so the future that we must build is one in which opportunity is abundant, right? Like we know when we step into some of these places that we belong, because these are spaces that are constructed for us and are actually responsive to our highest aspirations. And I know that part of our existence require us to dream, require us to kind of envision different and then work to actually manifest that. And I believe that an Afrofuturist lens can actually help us to actually both give voice to a more inclusive and more just future, but could also offer a roadmap for how we get there.
Thank you so much, Seth.
I can go next, I was gonna say.
Yes, please do. Absolutely. Thank
Yeah,
you,
I was just
Helen.
listening to everyone and just, yeah, I agree with all of that. You know, as I think when I imagine like, you know, the future, you know, Afrofuturism, I see a lot more unity within different Black spaces, you know, different Black communities, because Blackness is so abundant. I see like spaces like with no fear, and like where you can imagine and you know that there are, you know, opportunities, like endless opportunities out there for growth. And I also think about Africa. I mean, I think about that connection and knowing that you know, the continent is here, you know, and I hope for, you know, more connection with the Black diaspora, with, you know, the African continent, because there's so many opportunities there. There's so many similarities, you know, with history. So yeah, I think of the words like of unity and no fear and endless opportunities.
Thank you so much, Helen, for kind of rounding up all of those thoughts beautifully. And next up on our agenda, I'm actually going to have a wonderful woman present her contribution, just like we had Mike present at the beginning of the event. And her name is Les James. Les, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tamika. I feel so honored and joyful to be able to participate in this event with y'all. So my name is Les James, she, her pronouns. I am a writer, an artist, and briefly reflecting on Juneteenth. I appreciate all the things that other folks have mentioned, agree with those as well. I'm also recognizing though that for me, like there's this kind of a problematic holiday in the sense that, you know, like my sense of, you know, if it had happened to me, you know, folks being, yeah, we freed you 2 years ago, but we're just telling you about it now, like I'd be pissed off. I'm still in a way kind of pissed off. But I was also thinking in the sense of thinking about Juneteenth as a holiday that is basically a celebration of the public validation of my right to be pissed off as a Black person in this country. So that's kind of one of the things I'm wrestling, sitting with, playing around with the holiday. And it's also appropriate sentiment in relationship to the poem that I'm going to read, which is titled Why Black Women Write Horror Stories. Not surprisingly, it's a list poem. And it's also my way of imagining kind of a summary of non-fictional, not quite fictional, Afrofuturistic survey of Black horror story writers. And it's inspired by a number of aspects in my own life. One of those, just growing up in a time when there were like literally no horror movies in which the Black person, it was always like the one Black person actually made it out alive. But I would say that the spark for the piece kind of coming together was an opportunity that I had to hear Tanana Reeve do talk about her work and thinking about writing horror stories as Afrofuturism, and the way in which, you know, it's just really important for us to be able to create our own narratives about what happened, what is happening, and also what's possible. So I'll go ahead and read my piece. Why Black women write horror stories. Black women write horror stories because US history should be told as a scary story. Because slavery was a living nightmare. Because generations of Black people survived mass kidnapping, physical and psychological torture, rape and murder, and systematic dehumanization. Because look at where we find ourselves today. Black women write horror stories because Black people still fear for their lives, because white people are still afraid of their own shadows, because most people refuse to actually look in the mirror, because they want good and evil to be Black and white. Black women write horror stories because we have to exorcise these demons, because it isn't just all in our heads, because the monsters we have to face are real, because this country fed upon the flesh and blood of our ancestors to bring itself to life. Black women write horror stories because Black women have seen some scary shit, because it isn't safe to be Black or female, because the past isn't dead even if it's been buried, because the future could be even scarier. Black women write horror stories because these are the lessons that Black kids need to learn, because what you don't know can get you killed, because happy endings don't always tell the hard truths, because there's no sense in lying about it. Black women write horror stories because we are the hopes of our mothers, because we are the mothers of hope, because we know how to find our way in the dark, because we've done this before. Black women write horror stories because it's time to right the wrongs that have been done to us, because this is how we help our people make it out alive, because we have always been our own greatest heroes, because telling our stories just might change history. That's my piece. Again, thank you for including me in this event. And I believe I am passing it on to Kayla.
Hey, thanks, Les. Hey, everyone. My name is Kayla Brown. I'm originally from Florissant, Missouri, but I'm stationed in the Chicago suburbs. I'm a writer, I'm a mental health advocate. And when I'm not working at the Network for College Success, which is they focus on racial equity in classrooms and improving student outcomes. I'm blogging on brownpepper.com, where I talk about the importance of Black mental health. And when I think of Juneteenth, and this was a thought I had before I knew it was going to be a federal holiday, but the Juneteenth I know is where Black people, we are taking control of the narrative and create something beautiful from trauma. We are taking that story from being slaves and we're turning it into our festivities, celebration, barbecues, and just being in community together. So it's just, it's important to me because I get to see Black people be happy. And yeah, so the poem I'm about to present, it's called Insubordination, and it's inspired by what Black girls go through when they show up as their true selves in mostly white spaces. Insubordination. Kenya tried to sound the word out, feeling her candy blue colored tongue hit the roof of her mouth. The letters underlined in red reminded her of blood. She could see Miss Bowen's scowl in the word and gnawed at her bottom lip, remembering how the teacher's eyes forced her to fidget in silent submission. Kenya, that hair is inappropriate. Please have it taken down by tomorrow. With her scalp stinging and her neck so strained from how she slept the night before, she knew mama was gonna go off. 8 hours of good times and 227 reruns and $200 had birthed knotless box braids that draped to the middle of Kenya's spine. When Kenya dreamed of swimming pools, mama dreamed of an extra 15 minutes of sleep. The only mercy Miss Bowen had bestowed was telling Kenya this in the hallway, away from straight hair and blue eyes, away from stares and questions about how Kenya's hair grew so long in a day. If only Kenya could tell stories to Miss Bowen, stories that her braids clearly told but soared over the white woman's head. Stories of African tribes, dancing fingers, bobbing and weaving in between strands of struggle, centuries of haircraft that protected her from humidity and identity loss. Thank you so much. And I'm passing over to Tamika.
Thank you so much. Wow. I just moment of praise for the both of you. Like, you definitely were very intentional putting that pen to paper. I really appreciate that. So next up, I have a question that I would like to present to all of our speakers. And it's kind of a loaded question, but you're welcome to respond to both, one or the other. So here we go. What accomplishments do you recognize as big wins towards Black liberation? What do we need to work on in order to keep the progressive needle moving forward? And I am actually going to ask that Helen kick us off responding to that question, just because Helen, has a direct connection to the motherland. And I would love to hear her perspective.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I think it's similar to what I said earlier about Black people coming together, Black people learning about one another, and I feel like the accomplishments that I'm seeing is that Black people are owning their beauty, owning their stories. I mean, even with Juneteenth, a lot of people outside of African American communities were not aware of what Juneteenth was, including myself. I mean, I learned of it like in the recent years, and I remember last year with all the events happening here in the U.S. The social unrest. My friends and I, a couple of my friends and I, Black women and myself, we just took the day off from work, and we went and had a picnic by the lake, and we talked. We were having conversations about what was happening in the year, and how we felt. We were checking in with each other. So I would say, compared to when I was younger, to now, I'm seeing a lot more people having conversations with each other, acknowledging that they're beautiful, that they're, that they're powerful. And I mean, I think about like the natural hair movement, like with the, compared to when I was a kid, and seeing, and not seeing, like the textured hair or like the different styles, and witnessing that, like, and I think that's like a form of embracing, ourselves. So I think with, an event like this as well, inviting the community, and presenting, our stories. So I definitely do think the storytelling, the spaces, these safe spaces that are being created are incredible. And I think the way we continue is to continue to learn, to continue to understand that we don't know it, we don't know everything, but that's okay. And that there's so much more to accomplish.